Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. And it does promise to be an exciting one indeed. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and again we have Scott on camera with me for this morning's drive. And if you are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari. So everything that you are seeing on your screen is happening right here in real time on Djuma and Arathusa game reserves in the Sabi Sands. Now, John, Linda, and Joanne, you picked up on some lion vocals last night on the Arathusa Dam camera. Now, unfortunately, the Djuma Dam camera was not up and running, but never fear, we also heard those lions calling last night, and Scott and myself have been hot on their tracks to see where they headed off. Now, just as we closed the Sunset Safari yesterday afternoon, we had a report that Junior, the young Nkuhuma lioness, and the other Nkuhuma lioness, the adult, had crossed from Simbambili into Vuyatela. Now, I'm not too sure, but I suspect that those tracks are coming down towards the dam do belong to them. So really, really exciting news, especially for all of those of you who were asking for updates on those lions. If you are joining us for the first time, there's a young sub-adult male, or almost to the point of being an adult male, a young sub-adult lioness and an adult lioness who've been sort of split away from their pride. So we're going to be trying to follow up on that. Anyway, this morning is a very chilly 8 degrees, which is 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So really, really quite cold. Luckily, the nice thing about this time of year is that once the sun does start to peek over the horizon, it heats up very, very quickly. And on Wendy, the other vehicle, we also have James and Bryan heading out. And we've also got the bushwalk out. If they manage to get their signal up and running, then Brent will be making an appearance with Jeandré, and they've been out helping us to track lions. We've got our resident Marabou storks still here at the Djuma Dam, fishing away for those catfish who have some limited space around the dam. Now, I just need to get onto the Game Drive channel because Brent is calling me. He might have some updates on those lion tracks. Brent standing by. Okay, copy that, thanks. Does it look like males or females? Copy that, thank you. And that's an interesting update from Brent. Now, last night we heard all of the vocalizations from the various lions in the area. James, I was going to head north on Mvubu and check buffers for cutline. I can change that if you're heading to that area. Copy that, thanks. We're still with the Marabous at the dam, so it might be a while. Copy that, no problem. I'll check along Gowrie Main and see if there's any tracks from these other Ngala going that way. Now we're just coordinating our search efforts on the ground here. A little bit confusing because I mentioned that I thought that might be the tracks of Junior and the other two Nkuhumas, but now Brent tells me he's got big male lion tracks, at least 3, moving up north from Galago shortcut, so just north of where we are, north and to the west of where we are, and they're also moving to the north. I do want to do a double check and a loop around to see where these tracks that we last had coming down to the dam have headed off to. But if it was the Birmingham boys moving through, they were vocalizing a lot last night, and I suspect it was them. There were at least 2 groups calling at different times, and it makes me wonder whether or not Junior and those other 2 lionesses might have stayed quiet and possibly even changed their direction. I'm sure that they are looking to reunite with the rest of the pride, who were, I think, last report around Torchwood. I could be wrong, but that's as far as I know, which is east of here. And I think it might be a good idea just to check along our eastern boundary and see if they've headed in that direction. See, the Marabous actually have it quite easy at the moment. They're fishing around in quite a limited mud pool. There's not that much water left. Since our first rains, it's dried up quite a bit. We've had a couple of really, really warm days. And the catfish are easy game with these Marabou storks. You can see how they're using their really sensitive bills and very powerful bills to sift through the water. And I don't envy them. I think that must be really, really cold right now. I'm sitting here shivering, so I can only imagine how chilly that must be. It promises to be a really beautiful warm day today. Now, if this is your first time watching, we are an interactive safari as well as live. So if you do have any questions for us, or anything you'd like to tell us, you can do so on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Now, I'm very curious to see where these lion tracks have gone off to. And the exciting thing about a live safari is that you never know what's going to happen from one morning to the next. And that's the best thing about being out here in the wild, in the bush. But in the meantime, James is out and about. I think last time we spoke, he was checking to see if there were any updates from those female leopard tracks that we had moving down from final control, looked like into the drainage line. So let's see what he's been up to, and we will catch up with you a little bit later.
Good morning, everybody, from chilly Lowveld here in the wonder of the Kruger National Park. It's 8 degrees, which for us is Baltically cold, but the sun, as you can see, is starting to shine on my back, and things will warm up shortly. My name is James Jeandré. On camera today we have Bryan, trussed up like a camouflaged member of a very chilly sort of perhaps Russian expeditionary force into the Arctic. It is a beautiful morning. We found lion tracks and leopard tracks since we started, and they have all disappeared, obviously. But we've come up towards the Buffelshoek cut line to see if we can't follow up on specifically the lion tracks that came through here. The leopard tracks that Jamie saw earlier and that I was going to follow, I haven't re-found. So we're going to keep trying for those. Possibly Karula, which is quite nice. Again, I've only ever met that leopard once, and so I'd really like to find her again. The tracks, I don't know, we don't know where they've headed, so we'll probably loop around here and then head back towards quarantine clearings and see if we can't pick them up again. That is the general plan. Now, please remember, you are on a live safari. That means that you may talk to us. And indeed, we do enjoy hearing from you. #SafariLive if you're tweeting away like the crested Franklin calling over there, or questions at wildearth.tv if you happen to be on the email. Wherever you are on this fine planet, please feel free to talk to us and enjoy what is to be a live dawn safari. Those are the plans. Of course, the best laid plans in the world generally or can easily go awry, especially out here where biological systems don't read any textbooks and don't ever act according to how we think they're going to. So, that's the general idea. Brian, have I left anything out?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Shall we carry on? Right. So we're going to slowly sort of ooze up this road and see if we can't pick up some more tracks of either the lion or the leopard, and I'll keep you posted as we go. It's a stunning, clear, crystalline morning. I think it's probably going to warm up quite a lot during the course of our little drive. This large radio I have that you perhaps saw me wielding like a sword is a function of the fact that we do have a few little radio issues on Wendy, but they certainly seem to be improving. But that's why I'm carrying this thing here. I feel quite authoritative with it. I can point, I can hit Bryan if I need to, hit myself when I get the names of animals wrong. So not an easy job. Sometimes, you find animals once or twice and you think, gosh, I'm really good at this now. It's really easy. Then you have a day like we had yesterday where Scott and I were trying desperately to follow the Birmingham boys, and I'm afraid after hours and hours of finding their tracks and losing them, we just had nothing. So it's not very easy at all. Okay, I'm just going to yesterday afternoon we did have a lovely picture. We had a lovely sighting of a hippo in the mud in Twin Dams, just sort of lying there and looked almost stuck. And Lisa G and PK, you'd like me to go and have a look and see if he's still there. We'll definitely do that during the course of the morning. Go and see if he's okay. I thought he looked a bit stuck, I must say. Brent is hailing me on the radio. Stand by.
So you can send those tracks that you've got around the dam on all of there.
No, negative. I don't think so.
So this is Jamie now talking to Brent on the radio, Game Drive channel.
Tracks in the straight north from the Bull's Hook sign, Gallagher Shortcut Junction.
So, alas and alack, we do seem to have these lions crossing out. Brent is tracking over to the north of us there, and they seem to be crossing north out of us, which is a pain. But we will keep looking, fear not. John, while we're following these lion tracks, the tracks that I found were males this morning, and John Sherman, you would like to know, do we know who those males are? I think you're probably referring to the two that Scott had 2 days ago. John, those are definitely the Salati males, two Salati males. I don't know where they came from exactly, probably from the north, but they don't seem to be around at the moment. Although, that said, I heard 2 male lions calling last night. Definitely a tandem of 2 of them, and they sounded like they were still on Juma, which is this piece of land that we operate on. To the north of us now is Biffle's Hook, which is a piece of land we're not allowed onto. But John, I definitely heard 2 lions calling from around here yesterday evening. Now there is a deeply unappealing smell at the moment. Bryan, this is where the smell came from yesterday, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now apparently a hyena dragged a carcass across this boundary yesterday and is clearly devouring it somewhere nearby, but it really is a vile stink. So we do need to watch the ground very carefully. Young hyena track there, that's quite nice. They seem to have moved their den. You got it? I think we're just going to drive down here quickly. Just hold on one sec, everybody. Sorry, radios are a little difficult. Now, Marilyn, you have preempted what I'm doing now. While Brent is just checking for the lions, the hyenas seem to have moved their den, and there are lots of tracks coming down here, and so we'll just have a quick squiz about here and see if we can't find where there might be a new den, maybe on this game path along here. Just going to see if there are any tracks going along here. See any tracks going in there, Bryan? Well, nothing obvious. We'll just drive up this particular way. Marilyn, when we try and find the new den, which we will do, it's much better to try and do it on foot, obviously, because you can't just blast away through the bush, breaking things. And that's how we found this last one. Steph found it. He was walking around there, and he found the hyena den, which they seem to have moved. But as soon as we find it again, we will absolutely go to it. We'll just drive slowly up here, keeping a very keen eye out for any sign of lion tracks or indeed leopard tracks. Oh, it's very nice. As we come to the ridge crest here, the feeling of the sun is just glorious on the back of the head. Ooh. There's no lovely smell in the air. It really does change the smell in the air. It goes from a very crisp, chilly, kind of moist feeling down in the troughs, and it just, what does it smell like, Bryan? It smells like warm air, I suppose. A little bit like steam, I suppose. Crispness, yes, crisp steam. It was only about 8 degrees this morning, or 43 degrees Fahrenheit, which for this time of the year I would say is unseasonably cold. Often September is beastly hot. Not much in the way of rain. Marianne makes a good point that I should have my blankie on today. In Arkansas, Marianne, I don't have my blankie today. And now this is for a very good reason. The reason I don't have a blankie on, Marianne, is that because Jamie and I are both driving, and neither of us are particularly tall, we both have to pile the blankies on the seat. Otherwise you won't see us, you'll just see the tops of our heads. So all the blankies are under Jamie and I, and none of them are on top of us. So alas, no blankie around me legs today. going to head across to Jamie now. She is following some lion tracks, and we'll get an update from her, and I will hopefully see you just now with a bit of good news. See you later.
Welcome back, and as you may have heard through James's Game Drive channel, Brent has picked up on some lion tracks heading straight north towards the Buffels Hook cut line, and it looks to be, although we can't tell exactly how many members, it does look to be a whole pride, most likely the Nkuhumas. I would say that's fairly certain, although you should never say anything with complete certainty out here. And never fear, we're going to check and see if they've made it all the way into Buffels Hook. Unfortunately, that may be where the story ends for now, if they have crossed across, but I'm sure that some of the other guides will be able to give us updates. I'm just checking along to the east as well, since Brent is following up to the north, just to see if we can work out if two sets of tracks came together. So if the other Nkuhuma members moved towards where I saw those tracks of what looked like Junior and those lionesses. Just checking very carefully around Central Road, and by trying not to lose all sensation in my fingers. Ah, there we go. And there we have an update from Brent that the entire pride crossed north just to the east of Sydney's Dam. So they've crossed north across Buffels Hook cut line and into Buffels Hook. But this is great news. I'm really hoping that it means that the Nkuhumas are back together once again. And quite possibly that in the next few days, maybe we get to see Junior as well. I know it's been quite a long time since we've seen him. And September always catches me by surprise. I think it's summer, but it's actually not quite. So I pack away all of my winter layers at the start of the month and then instantly regret it around this time. Sure. Blinding sun. Might even be called for popping the hat on for now. Just to keep my eyes shaded a little bit, make sure I don't miss anything. Now, since we have had that report on the lions crossing north, might be time to change the game plan a little bit. Go and see what's happening across at Buffels Hook Dam. Still keeping an eye out for the tracks of the Birmingham boys, because Brent did say he saw tracks of a couple of males moving through as well. Curious to see where they've ended up. Those male tracks that Brent had, and if you were watching yesterday, you would have known that Scott and myself and James were also very intently looking for the Birmingham boys that we suspected were somewhere around Rebecca's Road. We just couldn't find them. And I think that those tracks probably belong to them, which is why I'm making sure that we check extra carefully to see if maybe they followed the Nkuhumas north. Now, with all of the calling that happened last night, it started out very close to quarantine clearings. There was lots of noise around that side. But by the time we sort of heard the last calls, the last call I heard was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And that was towards Buffelshoek. And that definitely sounded like male lions as well. Which sort of leads me to suspect that the Birmingham boys might have crossed north as well. But you never know. Hippos have been out and about in a big way last night. Cut line. Let's see what's happening here. As though we're all out and about in the search for lions. James has just picked up tracks for a single male along the fire break. Typically, the Nkuhumas move around this area. They sort of move between Torchwood, Buffelshoek and Djuma, and sometimes even all the way up into the Mandaleti. And Anne, you were wondering about typical pride territories, and that very much depends on the environment that the lions are in, lion density, how many lions there are around, and what the prey density is like for them. But typically they don't necessarily have enormous territories. They'll have a core home range, of which Djuma, I would say, and Torchwood and Buffelshoek would be part of the core home range of the Nkuhuma pride, and then it extends outwards to sort of fringe boundaries that will overlap with other prides in the area. So their southern boundary of their territory will sort of interact or cross over that of the Styx females, and then the Talamati prides off to the east will also loop across through into their territories. I'm just thinking what that would be in terms of area. Probably I would say at its maximum in the region of 2,000 hectares, possibly even bigger depending on the area that you are in. And that is entirely based around the sort of Sabi Sands region and this specific part of the Sabi Sands. It's not necessarily the case that if you were to have a look in Eastern Africa around Tanzania or Kenya, that territories would be the same size in that sort of area. Also is a little bit dependent on the pride size as well. So the more there are, the more space they need, the more access to prey that they need on a regular basis. So their home ranges and their territories might be a little bit bigger. But typically, in terms of prides, we don't necessarily think of them as territories per se. They are not actively defended by the prides. They don't scent mark around them in order to keep other prides out or other males out. That is the job of the pride males or the dominant males in the area. And it's their job to defend much larger territories that might overlap several pride home ranges. terms of male territories, they will have very large territories that overlap a couple of different prides. And typically those will be fairly distinct, although, as I said, the borders are a little bit amorphous. They can ebb and flow depending on where the individuals are. But generally, the prides they might overlap into sort of the southern areas of another coalition or another male coalition that isn't associated with their pride. But typically, because of the risk to that pride and the risk to their, especially if they have young cubs that do not belong to those males. How's that view there, Scott? Good. We've got a very sweet kudu in the morning sun. The light is really quite spectacular this morning. Hello, girl. Look at those beautiful big ears like satellite dishes. She doesn't look as fluffed up and cold as I feel, maybe because she's been standing basking in the sun. Just checking around, making sure she stays alert. Keeping a close eye on us as well. I'm just thinking about my plan for today while we're looking at these beautiful kudu. And I know that many of you would have been involved with the saga concerning Madiba and the fact that he did catch a stray dog yesterday. And I know Brent touched briefly on, and so did James yesterday afternoon, on the threat or the risk of rabies. And the dog has gone off to be tested. And very, very wonderful news for Madiba is that they will be inoculating him regardless. And what they have asked, or the management of Sabi Sands did ask us last night. Oh, I'm just going to be quiet for a moment. Brent said he could hear lions calling. Just listening carefully. Okay, the lions are calling in Buffelshoek. I'm not sure which lions, but I'm sure we'll get an update from Tax a bit later today. Anyway, so I just mentioned that the management of Sabi Sands has decided to inoculate him regardless of whether or not that dog does test positive for rabies, which is great news for him, but they have asked us to keep an eye out for him as well. I think once we've checked around Buffelshoek Dam, since the lines we've been tracking have all crossed north into Buffelshoek, we'll head across to the west and see if we can get any updates from there. Beautiful girl. Now, one of the things that was necessary yesterday with Madiba was that he had to be chased away from his kill, or chased out of the tree where he had the dog, so that the Sabi Sands could collect the dog and send it off for testing. And Renee and Laura, and I'm sure many others, are a little bit concerned as to whether or not that will affect the way that he interacts with people. Now, I mentioned yesterday on the sunset safari that I wanted to just give him some space and let him relax a bit. And I think he probably did get a bit of a fright, but I don't think it's going to have any long-term effects. It's a once-off event. And he's probably smart enough to know that it's associated with an odd prey species, because I'm sure it's never happened to him before. I don't think in the long term it's going to affect him in any way. He might, for a day or two, watch us a little bit more closely, but I don't think it's going to have too long-term an effect. I don't know what you think, Scott, but I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to stress him out too much in any way. And I know that when I was tracking him a week or two weeks ago, and he was very, very close behind me, I did give him a little bit of a warning stomp just to let him know he was too close, and he immediately learnt his lesson, and it didn't in any way affect him after that. And ultimately, that kind of action is entirely for his benefit. So totally worth chasing him away for that brief moment. She's nibbling away. I'm just having a look to see if there's any green leaves that she's actually got, or she's just nibbling at the end of growth points there. No, there's some. There are a couple of green leaves. And there you can see the oxpeckers getting busy now that it's been warm enough for them to be up and about. There's birds fluttering around her and doing her a great service in terms of tick removal and parasite removal. We've mentioned that we heard lions calling last night, and I suspected that it was the Birmingham boys. And we have had a question as to whether or not females will call, and they will definitely. So yes, definitely females do call, and they advertise their presence in an area. We haven't heard, or I certainly haven't heard, females calling in quite a long time in this area, and that is completely understandable. So Calvin, you were wondering if they do call. Yes, they do, but at the moment it's not that wise of an idea for them to be drawing attention to themselves, just because of all of the chaos that's been caused by the Birmingham boys moving through this area. And then also now the mysterious Salati males who made their first appearance at Djuma on Sunday. And so that is what they will be doing, but I think that's why we haven't heard them calling over the last few weeks. Now, I know there's also a couple of people who were concerned, or not concerned, but had heard lions calling at Arathusa and were wondering if we will be heading across in that direction. Well, since I am going to go and have a look around and see if we can find tracks for young Madiba, I will be right on our western boundary, so I'll definitely be asking for updates from the Arathusa guides. But first, I want to head up to Buffelshoek Dam and just see if there's any action around there. And then never fear, we will be out looking for updates from that side. nice thing about listening to lions' calls, just to get back to Calvin's question, is that you can very clearly hear the difference between females calling and males calling. And although the female sound is very, very impressive, it doesn't quite match up to the deep vibrations and the length of the male calls. It is quite an awe-inspiring thing. And we were fortunate enough a couple of weeks ago to have all 5 Birmingham boys around us calling. And it really is, truly, you can feel the vibrations through your chest, and it goes on just a little bit longer than the females tend to do. And last night, the calls that we were hearing, from my perspective, were definitely male. I didn't hear any females calling. And as soon as we see things start to settle, which could take a couple of months still, but once they do start to settle in this area and the prides start to feel a bit more comfortable with the males, then they will probably start to call again with more regularity. Males coming in from the north, and we've had the Birminghams coming into Djuma and then moving north, and we've had the Nkuhumas also moving north. And Terry Williams has noticed that there seems to be more movement from north to south rather than east to west, and I think that is I'm just thinking about it in terms of what else is out there. I would say that it's not particularly for any reason. I think that's just a coincidence over the last few days. And bear in mind that the Birmingham boys moved all the way from apparently just on the boundary of Torchwood and Kruger all the way back west and south towards Hoffman's, and then back around again and north now. So I don't necessarily think that is the case. That's just been coincidence over the last few days. Now, as we continue on our mission to Buffelshoek, I know that I've heard James's voice a great deal on the Game Drive channel this morning, updating everyone as to what he's been hearing. So for now, I'm going to cross to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
We're live. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we are now in the midst of trying to look at a brubru shrike. Now a brubru shrike is a shrike, unsurprisingly, and what alerted us to its presence was its call. It's also known as the telephone bird, and it goes brrrr, brrrr. Of course it's not doing that now because you've come live, and so it has got stage fright and become entirely silent. Come on, birds, sing. It goes. It's actually a bit of a bird party going on here. We've had there's a southern black tit in there as well. Can you see it, Brian? To the right-hand side, oh, flying away, of course. We've got another one. and we had a scimitar as well. Right, so we had a question, quite interesting one, about what sort of equipment we need to bring on drive. And from a new viewer, so I'll show you what I bring on drive. I bring a camera. I take one picture every week. We bring a couple of books on mammals and birds. Sunscreen, most important for pale Caucasian skin in the African sun. A bottle full of Epsom salts and water. It's normally salt, but Bryan bought me some Epsom salts because he said that would be good for my voice. This now will probably remain undrunk because, well, you don't drink it, you gargle it, but it tastes utterly appalling. So I'm going to go back to regular salt. Thank you for that, Bryan.
That'd be good.
Then a small tripod for my little camera. This was donated by VM. It's not a high quality item. In fact, I would say it's probably an extremely poor quality item. Some emergency earphones and a pair of powerful binoculars, last used by Napoleon Bonaparte just prior to his defeat at Waterloo. That is what we bring on game drive. What else? Oh, a hat, sun hat, of course, because now the sun is becoming quite warm. Yes, so there's the... oh, I've also got something else in here. I have a knife. Very important to have a knife if you're a ranger, mainly because you need to look manly with a big knife on you. I've never ever used this knife for anything other than whittling down pieces of beef jerky / biltong. And Christopher, the question was from you as to what we have to bring on drive with us. A lot of the other guys also have Leathermen, which is very practical. I've had a few Leathermen in my time. It's a multi-tool, but I've lost all of them, so I shall be purchasing one sometime soon. Then, of course, we have a tin enamel mug. Not sure what that's for. We have the spotlight. We have a wheel spanner. What else we got, Bryan? And we got and of course our main defence, a matchet or panga. So Christopher, those are the things we bring on drive with us. And of course Bryan has a huge amount of equipment behind him, and that's because the batteries and first aid kits and fire extinguishers, earphones, a box full of tape and tying things and lens cloths, blankie, various pieces of technological equipment, and of course the camera through which you are viewing me live here in the Greater Kruger National Park. Thank you for that question, Christopher, and welcome to it. Very nice to have you along. And a question from Ian, who I believe is also a new viewer. Somewhere in South Africa is Ian sitting, and Ian would like to know where my snack box is. Ian, I'm a very abstemious eater on game drive, so I'm not eating anything today, but I will certainly be eating something in the way of bird seed when I return from drive, and that will be followed with an enormous cup of black coffee. Just up ahead there, on the tree, we have a bird that you have been watching over the last little while with Jamie, and that is a Marabou stork, sitting warming himself on this magnificent morning, and you can see just above him, stunning sound of the African fish eagle, quintessential sound of Africa. Some might say cliched, but certainly a beautiful sound. Just above that Marabou stork, you can see wispy clouds, and I wonder if we aren't going to be hit with another front fairly soon. It's a lovely picture of that deep blue sky and Africa's possibly ugliest bird. What do you think, Bryan? He's not exactly up there with the martial eagle on the looks front, is he? No. Right, okay, let's carry on. We're going to carry on down towards Twin Dams. Just to give you an update, we heard the lions calling. We picked up some tracks of two males heading west. I'm pretty sure they were the Salati males. They were very fresh. Then we heard them calling. We drove at a great speed. Bryan held on for dear life. And unfortunately, they then called again to the north of our boundary, which is, well, irritating to say the least, but they are now heading north. Now, I think these are the two Salati males who John asked about this morning, and I think that they are filling what is a power vacuum, essentially, because the Birminghams have been chasing the Matimbas down to the south. Neither of them are around this area or haven't been around calling here. So I think those are the two Salatis trying to fill up the power vacuum here. It's all very interesting. I just wish that they would get on with their disputes a bit closer to home. Question from Edward on Twitter relating to the lions about whether or not anyone has done any research on the potency of urine versus the dominance of a male lion. Edward, I don't know if anybody has done that, but I mean, your question raises a few interesting other questions. Firstly, how does one measure potency of urine? Remember, we don't know what a lion can smell versus what we can smell. So maybe one smells stronger than the other. That could well have to do with a state of, how dehydrated is the lion? Has it been drinking? Has it not been drinking? What has it been eating? That will affect the smell. But of course also in the urine comes a lot in the way of hormones and pheromones. And that's what gives the display to potential rivals and females if they happen to be in the area too. So, your question about whether it is more, the dominance of a lion is indicated in the potency of the smell is possibly true, or possibly, it's possible because a lion that has an enormous amount of testosterone in its body tends to be larger and tends to be more dominant, and because of that, because of the heightened testosterone, you would expect their urine to probably smell a little bit different. So, Edward, very good question, and I think that I don't know for sure whether that is the case, but I suspect that if a big dominant lion, which by default will have more testosterone than others, does urinate and scent mark, I suspect it would smell different from one that didn't have quite as much testosterone in its body. Good question, thanks, Edward. Carrying nesting material. There's a big bird, everybody, but I don't think we're going to be able to show it to you. Whoa. We're going to go down the road over which it seems to be flying. A big raptor carrying some kind of nesting material. I can actually see the nest, I think. Might be a different one. We'll go down that road. Siberia, Zumi, you want to know about controlled fires? Controlled burning, of course, is a hot topic, especially with people who are not very familiar with the area and people who come from areas where you get those terrifying forest fires that cause enormous damage to homes and properties and indeed to people. Now, we do have fires that come through the area. We're out of the danger zone now. We've had our first 20 millimeters of rain, first of all, so probably won't get any runaway fires this year. That said, we do get them sometimes after years of very good rains. And after years of very good rains, when the grass is high, in the dry season, sort of August into September, we can often get fires that come through. But because they are grass fires, while they can be fairly terrifying, they're not exactly They're not quite like the big forest fires that you get up in the northern hemisphere, and indeed we sometimes get them here in Cape Town and around in the escarpment here when the tree fires get into the trees. Then those are terrifying fires, but out here not normally too terrifying. As to what we are going to sample today, Bryan and I, by way of new shoots that might look tasty to us or possibly tasty to herbivores. Lily, I haven't decided, but if I find something that looks like it might be good to eat, I shall be sure to test it out on Bryan, and if he doesn't drop dead, I will have some myself. Sound fair, Bryan?
Yeah, that's fair.
Thank you. So that raptor that we saw came scooting down here. I suspect it's a nest somewhere in one of these big trees. Looks like it might be a Wahlberg's eagle from the size. I'm just going to check in on the Game Drive channel, everybody. I've turned it down so I can't hear. Oh, there it is. It was there. It's in the Balanitis tree. Can you see it there? It's a Jeandré. I'm just going to quickly speak on the radio, everybody. Aubrey, come in, Aubrey. Orbs, I'm not copying you properly there. Tracks came out onto the fire break at the junction with a 2-track that goes to Gallagher Shortcut. They then went east, along there, and then onto the Piffleshoek cut line, carried on east, and headed north. I stopped following them once we heard them calling to the north there, and I just went straight to the dam, and they called further to the north of that. Confirm you've got other tracks coming south? Yeah, I'm not copying them very well at all. But those lions might be moving up and down, so maybe they will come back towards us. Good. So that bird that we saw there is called a Jeandré or African Harrier hawk. Very interesting raptor in that it doesn't sort of swoop down in traditional raptorous fashion. It flies into trees and then tries to pull out nesting birds. It's got what we call a double jointed intertarsus, which means that its knee joint bends both ways. So it can reach into tree holes and pull out chicks. Now I think that's its nest there, Bryan. You see there in the top of this tree. I think we did probably chase him out. There he is. He's sitting in the tree lurking, just north of us, at least south of us there. You see him? So there's the nest, and I have spotted the bird who's watching us with suspicion from a knob thorn just in front of us. Oh, and he's got his breeding face. So definitely the bird that is using this nest. Can you see it there, Bryan? So there is the Jeandré or African Harrier hawk, and it's got a red face. You can see it's normally yellow, but today and for the next little while the face will be red, because that's the breed. Oh, it's not. Well, it's pinkish. That is the breeding color. I wonder if it's got a kill. You know that?
That's what it was carrying us.
Yeah. Not nesting material then, maybe it's pulled something out of this nest. You It is devouring something. Some hapless bird, chick or reptile has met its end at the talons of the African Harrier hawk. Let's just try and sneak a little bit closer. That's really quite nice to see. Don't fly away, little bird. Looking a little bit nervous, like it might fly. Oh. There it goes. It did pick it up and carry it. Anyway, fascinating sighting that. Did you see where it landed, Brian? Oh, there it is. It's on the next knob thorn. There we go, that might be quite a nice picture of it.
Going around here.
Beautiful. Look at that.
I can't see it.
You can't see it? Oh, it's in the middle of this tree here. Sorry about that, Brian. Isn't that lovely?
I can. Yeah, who's there with you now?
So pinkish face there, normally bright yellow, unless they're in the breeding plumage, and now obviously in the breeding plumage, what with it being the springtime. Now apparently this African Harrier hawk was seen last year nesting in the same area, so not unusual. They're not migratory, but they will move away from the nests during the non-breeding season. I'm afraid I can't see what it's killed. Fascinating. Alright, Bryan, let us continue. We're heading down towards Twin Dams now. Come south. On Buffalo's hook, I'm afraid. We're going to go just quickly across to Jamie. She's got a couple of other raptors in a tree which look very interesting and intriguing, possibly wildbirds. We'll head across to them. Ooh, some hyena tracks, and I'll keep you posted on that hippopotamus. Enjoy the birds.
Now, Scott and myself did have a wonderful pair of African hawk eagles to show you, and a split second ago they flew away, leaving us with a wonderful pair of fork-tailed drongos. So not quite where we were intending to go with that, but you never know what's going to happen out here. Oh, and the drongos have decided to leave us as well. And it is a wonderful time of year where we get to see these nesting raptors. I know that you've been with the Harrier hawk. Now, fortunately, I have a backup plan to show you very briefly before we head back across to James. Since the birds decided not to stick around, I'm just going to shift forward ever so slightly, just to show you the flowering baboon's tail that's off to my left. Let's see if we can get a good place to see it. So from one sign of spring to another, I've got a slightly different thing to look at. I was going with the nesting raptors look, but for now we'll look at some very pretty purple flowers growing out of the baboon's tail plant. Very, very pretty. Now, our African hawk eagles have disappeared off into the distance. They're feeling a little bit camera shy this morning, and I still have to get across to Arathusa, and I think we'll head back across to James for now and catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with something that is a little bit less camera shy. Luckily, the flowers can't run away from us. And it seems as though James has gone black screen, so the gremlins are haunting Wendy still. And that means that you shall carry on with me on our mission to Arathusa. Just looking to see if my African hawk eagles have hung around. Unfortunately not. Now I know that there is a pair that has been known to nest on Central Road. I haven't seen them around the nest recently, but I'm sure that they are in the area. And the nice thing about this time of year is that all of the big raptors will have, or most of the big raptors will have laid eggs by now. The vultures may even have chicks. It seems that the gremlins that were attacking Wendy have been fought off, and James is back up and running, so we're going to head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we are approaching Twin Dams. I suspect that hippo was stuck, but let's have a look and see. Here we are arriving. Oh, news on the northern front is that they have found the lions that were calling. It was in fact the 5 Birmingham males, all 5 of them, now sitting on the hill north of where we heard them calling. No hippopotamus here, so fear not, the hippo was not stuck, or if it was, it has got out. Now, half of me is a little bit sad about that, because it means that we now have nothing to look at here at Twin Dams, but that's okay. We'll see what other birds and delights there are. We'll stop on the dam wall in the sun and see what wonders are available to us here. That's where the hippo was, everybody. It's not there anymore. We do have some squirrels alarm calling. Well, they were. They seem to have stopped now. Lots of bird song around at the moment, so we'll just have a quick listen. And I'll tell you what I can hear. Some blue waxbills, some brown-headed parrots, lots of ring-necked doves, black-crowned chagras, orange-breasted bush shrikes, grey-headed bush shrikes, crested barbets, brrrr, scimitar-billed wood hoopoes, brown-headed kingfisher, pity for you, pity for you. Gee, there's a lot. Oh, it's beautiful. Really is. I could sit up here very happily and just enjoy the sounds and the feeling of this warming sun on my face. Now, there's nothing quite like a morning like this for sound and general spirit food, if you like. Okay, so our hippo friend has moved off. Our plan now then is going to be to head onto the southern boundary and head off to the eastern boundary, which isn't too far from here, and then we'll head up towards Biffle's Hook Waterhole and see what we can find there. Jamie and I were extremely hopeful when we started off about lions this morning, especially after we heard them so often last night, but they do seem to have eluded us once again. Jeandré in Canada for your comment about the beautiful day that it is in South Africa. It is indeed a quite magnificent morning. It's one of these inspirational mornings where you are infinitely grateful for the fact that you are not sitting at a desk in a 2x4 cubicle staring at a computer doing something that you'd rather not be doing. Now please watch how we may go slightly black screen for a few seconds as we go through this dip, but we'll come back then. Thank you, John, for your comment about what the hippo left for me. A Cracker Jack prize. I'm not really sure what that means. I'm assuming you mean, however, that he left some markings, some territorial markings in the way of sprayed dun. Thank you very much for that, John. Yes, he did. I'm sure he did it specifically because he knew I was going to come and see him, and he wanted to let me know that he was okay and that his bowels were functioning in a perfectly acceptable manner. Right, you're going to lose me through the dip. I'll see you the other side. Hello again. I don't know if you did lose me, but I suspect you did. Oh, it is just gorgeous, I must say, as the sun starts to warm the air. Now, Patty and Georgianne, you're clearly regular viewers. You want to know when I think that the woodland kingfisher is going to make his appearance. Now, the woodland kingfisher, for those of you who don't know, is a wonderful bird of the summer, built and flies a little bit like an F-16 fighter, a glorious blue back, beautiful red beak with black underneath it, and it has a very distinctive call. And it goes something like this. It goes, chip, brrrr. And the first time you hear it, I think they'll probably come in early October, Georgianne and Patty. Oh, there's some nyalas. young nyalas. We'll just have a look at these young nyalas. And the first time you hear it, it's such a wonderful sound, the first woodland kingfisher of the summer. But if you live in a Mopani area, like I used to up at Ngala, not too far from here, because there are so many holes in Mopani trees, the population of woodland kingfishers was very thick, and that sound of the woodland kingfisher and his very vociferous attempts to attract a mate becomes slightly irritating, especially when it goes on all night. But it is a lovely sound to hear in an area like this where there aren't quite so many Mopani trees, well, there are none, and we do get a great thrill from hearing the newly arrived woodland kingfisher and the distinctive call. Those are some nyala, a nyala cow, or ewe, and a couple of very young bulls. Righty, beautiful. It's just a pleasure to stop every time this morning and enjoy the atmosphere of what is a spectacular, spectacular day out here. Most privileged, I feel, on a day like today. Right, I'm now going to replace my hat. You see how clever that was, Brian?
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Everybody, you missed my bald spot. And well practiced with that. Interesting question. We've some very nice elephant tracks coming across here. We'll just follow up once we get to the edge of the boundary, which is right here. Nice question about migratory birds. We've chatted about the woodland kingfishers coming back, and Elsa in Kalk Bay. And for those of you who don't know where that is, Kalk Bay is a magnificent little bay down near Cape Town and the southwest coast of South Africa, which of course is the most beautiful country in the world, so voted by a number of people, and most of them South Africans. And Elsa, you want to know why it is basically that birds migrate. Why do they go away from us, especially the raptors? Elsa, I think you had a specific question about the Harrier hawk or the Jeandré and whether they are migratory. They are not migratory. They stay here all year round. But things like the Wahlberg's eagles, they go off into North Africa. They don't breed there. They come back to breed here. Some birds will go away and breed overseas, like the barn swallow. They breed in Europe, and they'll come back here for the summertime. Now, the reason for it, Elsa, is simply to exploit food resources that couldn't be exploited otherwise. So the reason that you would want to avoid a northern hemisphere winter is because it snows a lot, and it's cold, and there's not much to eat. So if you happen to be an insect eater like a barn swallow, to come back here, or a reptile eater, or rodent eater, I mean, Wahlberg eagles eat a lot of reptiles and termites, then it's better for them to be in permanent summer, because there are always going to be reptiles around where there aren't going to be in winter. And that's why, well, I mean, in Africa, a lot of birds do stick around for the winter time because they've adapted to eating different things. But a lot of birds will go away and stay in the summertime in the northern hemisphere because there's just more to eat. More insects, more in the way of reptiles, more rodents running around. Remember, there's a breeding season in the summertime, so same as the impala breed here. We're just looking at some impala in front of us now. The impala breed here in November time. They will drop their lambs, and so it is in the northern hemisphere, where you will have rodents that will produce their youngsters at the height of the sort of summer and spring. And so if you happen to be a bird that can migrate and move to different areas, ooh, look. That's why they go there. There we have 2 brown-headed parrots, and they've got a nest here. This is wonderful. 2 little brown-headed parrots. And there's a nest there. Look, look, look. It's fantastic. Straight into the hole. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, this is really spectacular, people. This is the ultimate sign of spring. And to find 2 beautiful little parrots like this. It's our only parrot species here. Making their metallic call. We'll just pop up slowly towards the hole there and see if we can't get a look inside. Well, we're not going to see much, but maybe the female will stick her head out. She is still in there, she might. I think only one of them flew off. Did they blow fly? Yeah. Blow fly, okay. Well, so you mean we could sit here for a couple of days and not see anything? Isn't that lovely? So a brown-headed parrot, obviously a tree-nesting, hole-nesting bird. And I've seen them fly out of that hole before, but I've never seen them going into it or sitting around it. That was wonderful. So they'll be setting the nest up, ready to breed and lay their eggs. Lovely herd of waterbuck over there, mixed up with some impalas. We had a question about how those parrots defend their nests. Well, I mean, they've got claws, I suppose, and they've got very sharp beaks. So those beaks will be used to defend the nest against anything that might come into it. It's not easy, though, as a hole nesting bird. Once something like a snake knows what's going on there, I think it's quite difficult to defend. And I suspect that's why it's on the underside of that tree. It's probably a little more difficult for a snake to get into than it might be otherwise. But they will definitely, like most birds, harass any predator that comes near there. They'll dive bomb it and peck at it and try and discourage any kind of activity towards the nest. And the nest, of course, would be mostly attacked by snakes. It might be certainly a gymnogene, like that African Harrier hawk we saw, would go and be able to stick its double-jointed intertarsus into that nest and pick out any chicks there were. And then also maybe a genet or a smaller, some of the mongoose will climb trees, not the dwarf mongoose, but some of the others might go up a tree and try and pull some chicks out of the nest there. So not easy to raise chicks out here. Beautifully golden shining waterbuck here on this perfect spring morning here. I think it's also quite nice that the temperature's maintained quite a sort of chilliness about it. Otherwise it can be very hot by this time of the year already. Come on, Wendy, don't give up on me now. Thank you, Lisa in Arizona, for your comment. Birds nesting in a cactus near where you live. I'm not sure that you get indigenous American lovebirds. That's very interesting. Are they from Africa, perhaps? Let us head down down here, Bryan, and see if those elephant tracks going to pop out somewhere close by. I don't want to go down there, otherwise we're going to get stuck going down there. So the elephant tracks, which looked pretty fresh, were coming in this direction. So we'll just wind our way up towards Gowrie Dam and see if we can't pick them up. Oh, crispy day. That's quite interesting, Bryan. You see how the mountains seem to be covered a little bit in haze and a bit of cloud, and I wonder if there isn't another front blowing its way in. This does not bug me too much. I'm not too worried about that, given the inevitable heat that I know is going to descend on the Lowveld as we move into the summer. Lowveld, by the way, for those of you who perhaps new viewers, basically means low land, and it describes the area of South Africa in the northeastern section to the east of the Drakensberg Mountains, which you've just seen. And we lie at about between 250 and 400 or 500 meters above sea level, and that is roughly 700 to 1800 feet or so. And the highest point in this area is about 800 meters above sea level, so about 2,600 feet above sea level, and that's a little mountain in the Kruger National Park. But otherwise it's pretty low down here. That's why we call it the Lowveld, and that's why it's so volcanically hot here in the summer. And we have very pleasant winters. You know, we complain quite bitterly about the cold when it hits our coldest temperature, which is about 4 degrees Celsius, which is really not very cold at all. Seeing any further elephant tracks? Lots of Franklins still calling all over the place. The wind is still pretty fresh, is it not, Bryan? Bit of a nip. And what we're going to do is just look here to the west. And what I would like you to do, we've done a few screenshots on quarantine clearings that will give us a bit of a time lapse of different colors. This is another very good spot to do that, because you can see all over the top of beautiful Djuma, and even now I can see that what was a completely grey environment is now turning and to be twinned or tinged with a slight bit of green and a slight bit of golden yellow from the new foliage. So take a screenshot as Bryan swings the camera across, and we'll keep doing that every time we come past here in the next little while. Right. And then a very nice, we were chatting recently about the parrot's nest and what happens to it, what would prey on it and how they would defend. And Siberia Zumi makes the point that you watched last year, some weavers attacking a snake that was trying to get into one of their nests. Now, I think a weaver's nest is an excellent security system, hanging away from the tree, over water, which often makes them a little bit more difficult to attack. And Siberia, you say that the weavers actually killed the snake. Well, I think that's very clever of them. And I'm really interested that that happened. That also, of course, is the advantage of nesting communally. Going on in this particular spot. Ooh, Bryan, that wind has come up a bit.
One up the tree.
Yes. Okay. Now, the other vehicle, of course, is occupied by Jamie, and on foot, traipsing around in his great size 10s, we have, with their smiling front ends, we have Brent Leo Smith. So we're going to head across to him, and he will tell you what he's doing on foot, and I will catch up with you, hopefully, with something a little more exciting than the greening spring grass. See you just now.
Bushwalk. Jeandré is on camera with. I'm Brent with. Steph is behind with the walking stick with fire on. It's just their caution. They actually want. But exciting news. We're on a African bushwalk, and we had some elephants being drainage line behind. Sounds like a big herd. And normally you have to be very careful when approaching on foot. They're reading herd. Fortunately, very deep drain line between. I think there's an elephant not more than 30 or 40 behind me. I sneak up to that drainage line to see if we can have a good. This is incredible. We're on a live walk. That's fine. quite a big herd around there. The wind is absolutely perfect. It's blowing into our faces. They probably can't hear me either. So she's just feeding, continuing on. And this is the best type of sighting you can have on it. Approaching the animals without them even knowing you're there. About 40 meters from cast. The herd spread all along the northern strange line. Isn't this incredible? We're sitting here, the largest land mammal in the world. Sorry about the audio gremlins, guys. I'll just try and move. Hopefully that's a bit better. But we're sitting with the largest land mammal in Africa, or in the world in fact, and she is completely oblivious to our presence. Yeah, there's quite a lot of other elephants behind. And it's very important to use all your senses. Not only your eyes, I'm listening, I'm actually smelling. As I said, very slight little wind, and it's just coming towards us. Another elephant looks like it's coming from it's going to be very difficult in that thicket. I just got trunk in a gap. We're sitting here with these elephants. It's incredible the fact we're able to take questions from them. And we've got a question from Tom in Cape Town, who's wondering what is the composition of this herd? Is it just a mother and calf? Is it a bull? Tom, at the moment I can see an adult female in front of me, and just from what I can hear, there's probably at least 10 other elephants spread through this area. I can't really see the others. I can just see them moving in the Gowrie bushes beyond. I did see what looked to be a little calf to the back, and I can probably see 4 individuals now, but I can hear a lot more moving around on the other drainage line. So it's really special. I don't know if it's picking up branches break. A little bit here, but quite a lot of others, and you can see it's busy that tree. Looks like it's one of the bush willow species. She's after that new cambium that lies between bit of the bark. That's also what the dung, that colour, nutrient minerals, trees, and cambium. Moving it through the mouth. This is fascinating. I could sit here for hours. Well, some of you guys have noticed that I'm carrying a big stick, and Remace says, oh, I hope I don't have to Me too. We may actually keep it for the cameraman rather than the animal, just to make sure they behave themselves. Try if we can get a slightly clearer view of this elephant. Just going to move up the drainage line a little bit, see if we can get a window through her without trees in the way. Here. Let's give you a quick view before we move on. I think we probably get a nice view from that side. There she is. Probably a little bit in the now for 15 meters. She's completed it. Continue. Now, because it looks to be a termite mound where we might be able to get a nice clear view of it. Move away, and then I'll chat to you a little bit about what's been going on, okay? So wasn't that absolutely fantastic, guys? Those Ellies have started moving away, and that's possibly the best type of elephant breeding herd sighting you can have. And in circumstances, we actually wouldn't walk elephant breeding herds, but we had ideal conditions, wind into our face, and a lovely little drainage line just to create a bit of space. So even if the elephant gets food, they would feel safe and they'd be able to move away without us threatening them. So Margaret from Paris was wondering, when does it become dangerous? Well, Margaret, fortunately, most of us who are on foot here, actually I won't lie, all of us on foot here, have a lot of experience in the camera and have a huge amount of trust in our judgment when it comes to approaching a potentially dangerous animal on foot. So, unfortunately, things do happen. You could surprise them by accident in a thicket, so that's why you've got to be very careful when walking elephant herds. Elephant bulls a little bit more easy. They are less aggressive. Obviously, they don't have babies to defend them. You can hear them moving off, crunching the branches. But this is how we would like to view elephants on foot. We've come in, we've got close, 30 meters away. She didn't know we were there. We were safe, she was safe. One of the most important things is not putting the animals in danger. And if we put ourselves in danger, we'll put the animals in danger. So that was incredible. Absolutely wonderful. I'm on a complete high. We're not going to follow them any further. As you can see how thick the bush is on the other side, and also we don't have that sort of little natural boundary that keeps us safe as well as them safe. But what a fantastic way to start the sunrise bushwalk, and thanks to Jeandré for great camera work so far. You can just see the bushes moving as the herd moves further away. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to grab my game drive radio and see if James and Jamie are in the area, and they might possibly want to come have a look at these Ellies. James or Jamie coming. So they'll be able to get you much closer to the elephants than we are on foot, and it's a very different reaction to a vehicle. As I've said before, man is the dominant predator, and the bipedal figure of man can make animals nervous. Whereas in a vehicle's only been around for 100 years, they have that sort of primordial instinctive response as the same due to a human on foot. So, and it smells like diesel, and petrol, oil. If you drive carefully and respectfully around them, you can get really nice and close to them. But on foot, we do keep a very respectful distance from them. Doesn't look like anyone's listening to their radio. That's tisk. James or Jamie coming?
Go ahead.
Are any of you near Mumba Road?
Brandy?
There's a breeding herd of Ndlov, slowly mobile, sort of north Mumba Road from the drainage line between Leadwood and Mumba.
Okay, copy, thanks. Did you get a good view there, or do you think it's worth entry?
We had a reasonable view. I think everyone would like to see them from a bit closer.
Okay, I'll probably get that way.
I checked Drakensberger, they are quite spread out along that drainage line, maybe all the way up to Drakensberger as well.
Okay, copy that. I'll get some from
Copy, thanks, James. So it looks like James is going to go try on those elephants. We're just waiting to hear. Still hear them, but it sounds like they've started moving quite a bit quicker, and you can hear I've changed my voice, and we can speak north. And while waiting for James to possibly find them, I was telling you about elephant dung and why it's red. So here we go. Nice. Piece of elephant dung. You can see the fiber in it. And they battle to digest most of what they eat. They probably only digest around 60% of what they eat. So you can see there's a lot of fiber in it. Lots of grass and a lot of... Here we go. That's from the bark of the trees. That's not a nutrient-rich piece. That's what they've taken off well. But the reddish color is from that cambium layer. If we had to break a Gowrie tree, you'll notice that red layer, and you see where elephants have stripped the trees. you've got that very pale, almost yellow-white inner, and then that reddish color that's on the inside of the bark, and that's what's transporting the nutrients. So it seems like you're stuck with me for the moment. We will be crossing across to James as soon as he gets a little bit closer to those elephants. While you're here, let's see what else we can find. So while we're on dung, there's a completely different dung here. You can see here, very different type of dung to the elephant dung we've just looked at. This is a buffalo pack, and it's a ruminant. So what that means is it's got the 4 chambered stomachs, and it'll actually bring up its food again and again and again to feed on. And you can see how fine it is. And if I grab that little piece of elephant poo, you can have a look. And we're going to put it right next to the buffalo. So if we break it up like this, you see how many big chunky pieces are there in comparison to the buffalo, which is really, really fine. So the buffalo definitely gets more out of what it eats than the elephant. And that's possibly the reason why elephants have to eat so much in a day. They have to eat up to a female, probably around 150 kilos of vegetable a day. A big male can eat up to 250 kilograms. But anyway, enough of that. We're going to send you across to Jamie while James tries to make his way towards those elephants, and we'll see you a little bit later on the walk.
Welcome back, and it sounds like you had a really amazing sighting with those elephants on foot. Now, sometimes you get the nice big things in the bush, but very often some of the smaller, littler things go unnoticed. And if we just have a look down here are some of both Scott and myself's favorite little birds. Tiny, tiny flashes of blue in this open patch of grass. They're just pecking around and finding seeds, and there's probably, I don't know, I'd say about 15, 20 around us. We've come into, what did Scott say, a whole herd of them. And these are blue waxbills, for those of you who don't know. And the blue obviously quite clearly comes from the colour of their chest and their stomach. One of the more common waxbills that we see in this area, see them the most. And their little chirps sound a bit like a car alarm, not being set off but being activated, that little beep beep. And whatever it is they've found around here, they're enjoying it a great deal. Now, just to keep you updated, I have come across into Arathusa, and it doesn't seem to be much happening around here. I've asked for an update from the guides, and they don't have anything on Arathusa. There were lion tracks on Simbambili that some of the rangers are still following up on, but I haven't heard what the outcome of that was just yet. I don't think they've found them. Unfortunately, outside of our traverse zone. So for those of you who are wondering at the lion calling that you heard around Arathusa Dam, either way it seems that they've moved out of Arathusa sometime last night. I'm going to try and inch forward. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer to these birds. We can watch them from just a closer perspective. They are very sweet. Now, I'm sure many of the other presenters, and myself included, have spoken about bird feeding parties. And these are one of the more common species that you will see. So when you get a whole group of birds together, all feeding, all different species feeding in one area, that's known as a bird feeding party. Here before we scare them away.
Where's Ray gone?
There's some off to the left as well.
Right.
Go, look how beautiful he is. Both of them are. That bright blue flash of colour. And blue is probably one of the more unusual colours that we see out in the bush. The kingfishers and the lilac-breasted rollers have it. Interestingly, it's not made by blue pigment on the feathers. Made by a combination of refraction and reflection of light, not in the same way that glossy starlings have keratin layers, but it's a similar concept, and they're arranged in a way that only let the blue wavelengths of light flash back. So all of those pigments and layers around the feather. Oop, off we go. And that was really nice. It's not that often that we get to film blue waxbills. They're usually fluttering from tree to tree and hidden away. So that was a nice special treat for us all to get to see them on the ground and feeding out in the open like this. A really, really very cool sighting. Now, originally when I arrived here there was a wildebeest, but he appears to have moved off. And I think that we shall do the same and start to head towards Arathusa Dam. My way out, I wouldn't mind stopping to have a look at this beautiful leadwood stump. Very, very picturesque tree. Now Scott tells me that he's heard from the other Arathusa guide that there is an African barred owlet, which we saw yesterday on yesterday's sunset safari. Tiny little owl. Apparently there is one nesting in one of these hollows. We're not sure which one, and we can't really get film in there. Can't get the camera to see it. This is a leadwood stump, and I would love to know how old this particular tree is. The wood of leadwood is so incredibly hard and resistant to wood-boring insects that they can last. They've done carbon dating on stumps that have shown that even after the tree has died, the stumps and the wood will last 500, 600 years after that. So I'd love to know exactly how old this tree is and what it's seen. Beautiful tree. And the perfect home. I'd love to know as well how many different animal species are living in there. We were just sitting with those bright blue birds, And Monica, I believe that you have a question. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. And you were wondering what those little blue birds are, or were, that we were looking at. Well, Monica, they are known as blue waxbills. And what I'm going to do just quickly is find a picture of them in my book. Oh, it's actually open on the picture of them in my book. And let's have a little bit of a closer look so you can have a see, because they are so small, we don't necessarily get to see all of the detail that's on them. As you can see, both the adults, male and female, have that bright blue, so that is just the standard adult. The juvenile is slightly more mottled and pale. Generally, if there is a little bit of a difference between males and females, the male will be just that little bit more bright in terms of the blue color, but not very obvious. It was a wonderful feeding party of blue waxbills that we saw. And they make the most beautifully designed, intricate little nests. You usually find them all weaved into thorn trees. And they make these incredibly intricate. I'll have to see if I can try and find one. But they're weaved and they make these beautiful little cups. And often what they'll do is they'll wrap together with spiders' webs just to hold the nest together. So really clever little birds. And probably the most interesting sighting I've ever seen of a blue waxbill, although they are wonderful, fascinating little birds, was out on a walk. And there was a waxbill in front of us, and we couldn't understand why it wasn't flying away, even though it was desperately flapping. And it turned out that it had been stuck in a golden orb web spider. No, a golden orb spider web. There we go. We got there eventually. And that web is incredibly, incredibly tough. The strands, especially the anchor strands, are really, really strong. If you fold them a couple of times, you'd have seriously difficulty breaking them. So for a bird that's only a couple of grams in weight, it was actually completely stuck in the spider web. Now the spider, if it had gone up to it, wouldn't have been able to kill a bird of that size, and the bird did manage to break free in the end. But just goes to show how, first of all, how tiny waxbills are, but also how incredibly powerful the spider webs can be. But our little waxbill feeding party has disappeared off. And I want to go and see what's happening down at Arathusa Dam. Whether James has had a chance to update you or not, I don't think so. I think the update came through whilst you were with Brent with those Ellies. But it seems as though the Birmingham boys have killed something. It sounds like a buffalo. I didn't quite hear what it was. But they'd killed something probably at most 200 meters from our boundary, probably even less, probably around 150 meters, just north in Buffelshoek, just by Gowrie Dam. So they are around. It does mean that we will very likely be hearing them sometime this evening as the sun goes down. Maryland in California agrees with me that sometimes it's really worth stopping for the little things. And some of my most amazing sightings have concerned all of the little objects or all of the little animals that we get to see around here. Now, Marilyn, you were wondering if we get elephant shrews in the area that we're in at the moment, and the answer is yes, we do. They're not all that common. I actually haven't seen one here yet, although in the area that I used to work at, we got to know where some of their nest areas were, and they nest in holes in the ground, and then they have little pathways, little escape routes, almost like a maze that they create in the undergrowth, and they have them they keep them and maintain them, keep them clear, so that when they need to duck out away from predators, they can do that. Awesome little animals, named the elephant shrew, obviously because of the little proboscis, the little extension of the nose and the upper lip, in the same way, similar to the way that an elephant, is an elephant. It's the same way to an elephant structure. I was just looking at the dung thinking, my word, that looks fresh. There's a whole herd of elephants. Shift into low range so that we don't cause them any disturbance. It is quite a large herd. Makes me wonder about whether or not these were the culprits who broke into Arathusa 2 nights ago. Hello guys. It's okay, little one. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 so far and counting. Oh, look at that sweet little one on the right there, munching away, debarking what I think might have been part of a raisin bush at some point. And I've noticed recently lots and lots of uprooted raisin bushes and patches of ground where they've completely pulled them away using their ankles, just like that little one is trying to do now, to break off right at the base to get all of the nutrition out of the plants they're eating. Just going to be quiet for a moment so that you can hear the sound of the munching and crunching that's going on all around us. We've actually got quite a nice opportunity just to have a look at the female from behind. Now, a lot of people can find it quite tricky. Ooh, she almost looks pregnant to me, bulging out sideways. A lot of people find it quite tricky to tell the difference between male and female elephants, especially because male elephants, their testicles are internal, so you can't use those as an identifying feature. But since she's so kindly presented us with her profile, have a look at the shape of the forehead first. There's that, you'll see that it sort of meets at an angle. It's quite angular just up and above her eyes. It's almost just over a 90-degree angle. Whereas with the big males, I'm just looking around to see if there is one. I can't see one here. But with the mature adult bulls, they have a much more rounded forehead. But that being said, it's not the only identifying feature. This female has quite large tusks, but usually the tusks are a little bit thinner in females. You can also see between her front legs is the much more prominent nipple. Now the males have them too, but in females it's quite obvious. Obviously for feeding and lactating. And elephants are unusual in the positioning of their nipples and their mammary tissue. only really the primates and elephants, and funnily enough rock hyraxes that have them positioned between the front legs rather than behind between the back legs. They're quite unusual in that respect. So that's just a quick crash course on this female Ellie and how we know it is a lady. This is a wonderful breeding herd of all ages. I have mentioned to viewers before, there is nothing that makes me happier than spending a bit of time with elephants out here. There's just something about their calmness that really, to me, brings up my mood no matter what I'm feeling. There's something about their peace and their tranquility and their wisdom. Let's sneak a little bit forward, or let's see if we can, as their bottoms disappear into the bush. I think the road curves around nicely, so we should be able to get a nice view of them from a different angle. Shift forward a little bit. I just want to gauge the reaction of the one Ellie here who's next to us. Yeah, I think that he, and it is a young male, does want to go in front of us and reunite with the rest of the herd. Or it's spotted something yummy to eat there. Using that amazing conveyor belt motion to strip the branches of their bark. Now, Carol, you were wondering a little bit about elephant teeth, and I'm sure it's something that many of the regular viewers have heard about. And elephants are absolutely fascinating in this respect. So they've got their permanent tusks, which are essentially teeth. They are modified incisor teeth, like you and I have, and they're designed to extend forward. Now, they have that permanent set throughout their life, and that continues to grow, although they will be worn down as the elephant uses them to strip bark or to dig up roots. But the most fascinating part of their teeth is actually the molars at the back. Now, they have a set of 4 molars at one time, absolutely enormous. So they only have 4 teeth in their mouths, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. And they use them in that crunching, grinding motion in combination with that unbelievably dexterous trunk. Now, as you can imagine, having to eat, if you're a full-grown elephant, having to get through 300 kilograms of food a day, that's a lot of chewing that's involved, and they don't exactly go necessarily for the softest bits, as this one is demonstrating as he chomps on what might be a young bush willow that's already been fed on before. So it starts to wear down the teeth, and in the end what happens is you've got one worn set with a new set pushing in from the back, which then pushes the old ones out and replaces them. And throughout its lifetime, unlike us, you know, if we lose one of our permanent molars, that's it, we will never grow any back. An elephant will actually grow back or go through 6 sets of teeth in its lifetime, 6 sets of molars. And once it gets to that final 6th set, around 50 to 60 years old, they become worn down and there's no more teeth to replace them. And it's at that point that they are starting to get a little bit old, and they start to struggle to really chew properly, which means they don't digest properly. And that, in the end, is what hastens the end of their life and brings it to its natural conclusion. Elephant teeth really are quite amazing. And he's this little guy has given us a perfect demonstration of an elephant feeding technique. He's actually done quite a few direct bites from the tree, which is not their most common technique, but he's been chomping away at the thinner edge branches. And just while I've been watching, he seems to be after mostly just the bark around that stick. Now, Angie, you've noticed that some of them seem to favor small branches and some of them seem to favor larger branches. And you were wondering if it was to do with the nutritional basis or how it all works. And it just depends on the type of tree that they are eating. And you're right, it has to do as well with the nutrition content that they decide what to feed on. And really, the only area that you're going to see major feeding differences is for the young calves, where it might be just that little bit easier for them to pick smaller, softer branches and food. And they're still getting to know how to use their trunk. Hello, little boy. There we go. Back to the raisin bushes again. He's definitely enjoying them. And then you'll also see a difference in the feeding of maybe a really old elephant whose teeth have worn down. But yes, I'm sure that there is a level of selection between males and females and ages. Individuals might even have a preference for certain types of food, but most importantly in terms of their food selection will be the time of the year and the season. Now that our little boy has moved away from the road for the moment, I'm going to just try and shift around and reposition so that we can get some of the elephants from front on as they eat, because Maggie M has sent through a very, very interesting question. So Maggie, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It is great to have you on board. Now, Maggie was wondering how elephants chew. Do they move their jaws from side to side? Or do they move them up and down? And I actually have to think about this and I have to look. For the most part, I've seen them moving them from side to side. But they can actually move them up and down as well. Just approach nice and slowly. No, big girl. Alright, I'm stopping here. We're stopping here, no stress. It's actually a combination, Maggie. Just chewing side to side in a kind of circular rotation. So open and shut and side to side combined. And there we have an answer. And of course they have to have a degree of flexibility in their lower jaw, since the top of their jaws and their trunk are completely fused. They've all congregated around a rather large silver cluster leaf. I think they're targeting the raisin bushes underneath. But there you go, you can see the little one. Still sometimes struggling with that trunk coordination. Can't quite get the angle of the branch right. We've been talking a little bit about the way that they chew, Now, to further elaborate on the way that they operate, James was wondering if they are left or right-handed, or if there's any preference for the way that they rotate their jaw. And it's a really interesting question. There's a lot of debate about it, but most people have suggested that elephants are either left or right tusked. So they favor one tusk over the other. It's known as sort of the master and the slave. So one tusk will be nice and long, and that's the tusk that they generally don't use. And then one tusk will be rubbed slightly shorter and blunter, and that tends to be the tusk that they favor. They also, when they use their tusks to break branches, when they wrap their trunks over them and pull them down and then jerk their tusk up underneath as a way of stripping, that's a way of determining if they are left or right-handed. I do just want to see if what this Ellie's doing on the termite mound. I'm going to just shift forward a little bit, see if we can get a clear view. One of the young ones has climbed up onto a termite mound. Let's see if we can sneak a little bit closer and get a view. Might just be heading up there for extra nutritional value. Yeah, let's see if the view is a bit better overhead. Here we go. Two little Ellies on a termite mound. That's very sweet. And they've worked out that termite mounds are the best place to go for extra nutrition. Anyway, James, to get back to your question, I'm just also wondering what the weather's like in the Cape area at the moment, if it's starting to get warm yet, and if the winds have stopped blowing. In terms of rotating in the way that they chew, I don't think that there will be any preference, just because otherwise they'd grind down one side of their teeth faster than the other. I think you'll probably find that it's fairly even. But in terms of their right and left tusks, there's definitely an argument for elephants being left or right tusked. Now, for any new viewers out there, we often see animals, particularly at this time of year, on termite mounds. And the reason behind that is the termites, when they are excavating their tunnels deep below the surface of the ground, they bring up a whole load of nutrients with them. And that in turn imparts an extra nutrient content to the plants that are growing on the termite mound, which is why we so often get beautiful big green trees. In this case, the Eddies are targeting the grasses here. And you'd probably even find that there's a bit of a higher salt content as well. I've also seen young elephants play king of the castle on termite mounds. When one is trying to be bigger than the other, when they play fighting, one will try and use the termite mound to get up and above the competitor. As our Ellie descends from the termite mound, I believe that James has some interesting birds to show you. So we're going to head across to him, and I will be back with you just a little bit later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we have found two very odd residents of the road here, two Marabou storks, of whom you have seen many today, and one of them on the left there of your screen is resting on its tarsals, the sort of lower joint of the legs. I don't know why. And the other is standing alternately on one leg and then on two legs. Why they are standing on the road, I don't know. They're two juveniles. You can see this from the sort of rough and strangely balding heads that they have. They're not quite bald yet, which they are as adults. So they're two juveniles, And just before we got here, there were 2 adults also that flew off. I suspect that they are not enjoying the weather very much. It is pretty chilly out here. And yeah, I don't know why they're away from the water, why they would have chosen to stand on the side of the road like this. One of them is yawning. They are truly quite astonishingly ugly. The other thing that the Marabou stork does, apart from eat catfish, of course, is eat carrion. Now, maybe they've spotted some sort of dead or dying thing around here, or thought they did, and then landed and thought, well, it's too much of an effort to get up into the sky on a chilly day like this, so let's just stay here for a while.
Okay, Gavin, yeah. And have you got that other male on the other side of the range one? No, he's on your way down.
Now, an interesting question from Les in Cape Town. What does the word marabou mean? I don't know. Les, you say, does it come from the French word for priest? I suspect it possibly could. Although if I found a priest like that standing at the church, I'd run away screaming. But it's quite possible that that's exactly where it comes from, and I can see it's probably from the sort of black cassock-like wing coverts that they have that gives them that name. Thank you for that, Les. I'm just looking at my bird app now, and it doesn't say, it says that the Latin name, Ciconia crumenifera, comes from crumeniferus, a leather pouch referring to the inflatable air sac that occurs underneath the beak, which tends to be apparently some form of cooling mechanism during the heat. But I don't see anything on what a marabou means, but certainly when you look at it, it does look a little bit like a aging and malnourished priest in a cassock. Thank you for that, Les. Very nice question. They're near threatened in South Africa because there are not that many breeding populations around here, and I suspect that's largely a similar issue as the vultures have, of course. Mainly they get poisoned on farmlands by farmers who do set out poisoned carcasses still to this day to try and get rid of predators that harm their livestock. Now, if we just pan up from them, Brian, you'll see a whole lot of birds taking to the skies. You see them there. There are 3 or 4 of them. Now, what they're doing there, everybody, is they're taking off because it's starting to get warm. Now, Brian, the marabous have stood up, and I wonder if they aren't going to do the same sort of thing. It's not getting warm, but because the sun has been shining on the ground, there will be the odd thermal that is starting to come off the ground, and those birds will be using the air as well as the thermals at this time of the day to come up and fly. So I wonder if we won't see those marabous take off fairly soon. Of course, the easiest way to view that would be to rush down the road and chase them, but I don't think I'll do that. Alright, so we've seen marabous aplenty today. I think these chaps will eventually fly off, or they're going to when I drive past them, but we're going to head back to Jamie and her elephants, and I will see you a little bit later.
Welcome back, and we've stopped at quite a special female with a bit of face paint. Of course, she just turned around and walked away. She had a beautiful orange-red stripe across her trunk that was stained from the tannins in the bark that she's been eating. I'm hoping we can catch up with her. Maybe she'll turn around and face us in a moment. She does look as though she's looping around. I was actually making my way to have a look at these young chicks that I've been hearing about from Mary. Apparently there are some young ducks at the dam, and I'd love to go and see them, but we did encounter a bit of an elephant roadblock. Let me try and shift forward slightly. Maybe we can get a look at that really cool face paint effect that she's got going on. It's almost like a really cool war stripe. Also have a look at where she's been feeding and what she's been doing. Sometimes you need finesse in feeding, and sometimes you just need brute force. And I think she's going with the combination of the two, using her head to bend the tree over and then getting to some of the smaller, younger shoots at the bottom. Here you can see the patterns of red on her trunk. It's so cool because it's touched on the sort of upwards curves of the wrinkles, but not deep into the grooves. So it makes a solid line when she contracts her trunk, and then it's stretched out and you can see the spaces in between. It's so cool. Now when I entered the sighting, and as I came through now and encountered this female on the road, did it very, very slowly and carefully with my vehicle in low range, just to keep the revs down nice and quietly. And one thing that we all do as guides instinctively is watch very, very closely the behavior and the body language of the elephants in order to determine what they are going to do. Now, Assad, you were wondering how you know if an elephant is angry or upset and if it's going to charge. And there's a couple of different signs. The first warning sign, and it is not, you cannot ever discount any animal warning as not serious, but it's probably one of their first forms of defense. First, they go very still if they're aware of you and they're summing you up. And very often what they will do is they will open up their ears, make them lift their heads up high and make themselves look as big as possible as an intimidation technique. And they usually stand and stare at you for a moment and then relax again and carry on feeding. If you get a little bit of a sort of jog forward, ears out, head up, and often with trumpeting involved, that's them really telling you, no, seriously, it's time for you to leave. A bit of rumbling going on. I think it's probably masked by the wind on your side, but the herd members are doing that deep, low-frequency rumble they do as a communications technique. Now, in terms of elephant charges, the most serious, I never use the word mock or the description mock charge. I believe you get warning charges and then you get genuine ones. And the most dangerous one is often when they go silent, and if they tuck their trunk up and they run at you without a sound with their ears back and their trunk tucked up or to the side, that is when you know you are in fairly serious trouble and that the elephant means business. But it's important to remember that these are very complex animals and they deserve and demand a certain degree of respect. So a warning charge with lots of noise and big ears out and flapping means it's time for you to go and leave them alone, or stop whatever it is you've done to cause that reaction. How wonderful animals. The other thing that they do, and I've often seen it in large bulls, especially bulls in must that are relaxed, but they're just thinking about their next move, is they pretend to feed. So they wrap their trunk around whatever they've been eating and they lift it up to their mouths, and then they just sort of casually let it fall out again. So they're pretending to eat, but all the while watching you out of the corner of their eye and deciding as to what their next move might be. moment, these Ellies have been seriously favoring the silver cluster leaves and some of the smaller branches of them. Now, what I did want to show you is I spoke to you a little bit earlier and said very recently I've seen a lot of fresh digging spaces where the elephants have been feeding, and we've got a perfect example of one right here next to us. Are we a little bit too close, Scott? Or good? Okay, cool. This is what I've been seeing a lot of recently. The freshly dug dirt, and they're pushing to get into the fresh roots at the bottom and the growing stems around the area, and they're using their feet and their tusks to just push their way in here. So James, you were wondering about the size of the branches that the elephants go after, and yes, they seem to be at the moment targeting a certain size of these silver cluster leaves, so they're targeting the sort of small strands that are coming out at the side, but that's very much species dependent, and it doesn't mean that they are not able to or don't enjoy a slightly larger or a slightly smaller branch. It just depends on the type of plant and the amount of nutrition it has in it. Now, our Ellies have moved off slightly, tucked away towards the termite mound, and I really want to have a look at what's happening on Arathusa Dam, see if we can see some of these little baby birds, the first signs of spring. Just check behind me for Ellies. No, very good. And I'm also just wondering if the Ellies might not be on their way there as well. Might be heading down for a late morning drink. What this little one's doing. Coming to investigate, he's giving quite a good example of the ears out, head up posture, but I think he's chickened out now. He was coming to say hello. No, I think he's just decided we are not worth the trouble. Somebody's cross at the back though. Can hear a bit of trumpeting behind us. Usually with these breeding herds, a lot of the noise actually comes from the babies. So those incredibly loud trumpeting sounds that we do hear, that's usually the babies screeching at something and quite often begging for milk as well and an opportunity to suckle. They can be very, very vocal about their displeasure, just like human babies can be. And they also, you find a lot of vocalization if there is a big bull, especially a big male in must, if he's harassing the breeding herd slightly and looking for mating opportunities. That's when you get the most vocalizations from Ellies. But otherwise, for the most part, it tends to be the young ones, sort of 1 and 2 years old, that make the most, cause the most noise. Baby rhino do it too. It's one of the cutest sounds to hear them begging for milk. The little squeals that they make. Thank you, Ellies. It's been fun. Let us see what Arathusa Dam has to offer us. I'm very keen to see these new little fluffy signs of spring. Anticipation of the baby birds that we are going to see, or hopefully going to see now. I'm just thinking about the various bird species that are around that dam regularly. I'm wondering if some of the jacanas might not be hatching soon. There were definitely Egyptian geese around there last time I was there. And for those of you who did send through those updates on the baby birds and the chicks, what would be really awesome is if you could send through an update as to which side of the dam they were on. So if you are watching now, if you'd like to let us know, you can do that on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Those updates from our dam camera came from Mary and Lynn, and they were from last night, where they were seen splashing around and bobbing about. I'm sure we will still be able to find them and follow up from there. In search of these little signs of spring, these little fluffy feathered ones, I believe that James has been having a look for an update as to how his leopard orchid up in the dead tree is doing. So let's see what he's up to. Maybe he's up a tree, maybe he isn't. We'll just have to wait and see and catch up with you a little bit later.
Everybody, welcome back to Wendy. I am shouting because there is a howling wind blowing across Gowrie Waterhole, where I have come to check upon my leopard orchid that I planted here. I will check now while you watch me. Oh dear. I planted it here. I can see it. It has not been preyed upon. And it has gone brown. And it is not growing yet as far as I can tell. I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading on the propagation of the leopard orchid Ancelia gigantea. Then we did have some very nice updates about the word Marabou, which I'm going to give you once I have descended from this tree in an elegant yet bird-like fashion. Was that good, Bryan?
Very dexterous.
Thank you so much. Now, I was yelling at the top of my lungs there. The word Marabou, from Debbie, Maddie and Georgianne, means various things in Arabic, I think, and apparently saintly, quiet and dedicated to God. So it doesn't seem to be from the French for priest, but I'm not sure what is saintly about a Marabou stork. They are quite quiet. They don't make a huge amount of noise unless they're in a squabble over some food, but they're not noisy like the crested francolin you can hear over there. How dedicated they are to God, I couldn't tell you because I'm unable to speak Marabou, but I suspect it's got... I quite like that French explanation because they did look like they were wearing black cassocks. Anyway, who am I to argue with the Arabs? Now, we're going to head off towards quarantine clearings. There was a little bit of general game there when I came up initially, and I'm also hoping there was some female leopard tracks around there early this morning. maybe Karula's around, but she does tend to, when she comes into this area, I find she's a little bit like a spirit. She becomes difficult to see. Well, she's always difficult to see, but that's certainly, she's not an easy one to track around here. So we're going to head up that way and see what we can find. The wind has come up and it's now blowing quite strongly. It hasn't warmed nicely like I thought it was going to, and Bryan reckons that there's another front coming in. I think he has information that I do not, and it certainly feels like there's another front blowing in. And that's very typical kind of weather for this time of year, you know. We tend to, in 1982, when I was a small pup of about 6 years old, in fact I was 5 at the time, just about 6, there was a snowstorm in Johannesburg, which of course is a very rare occurrence, extremely rare occurrence. We sometimes get spatterings of snow, but nothing that lands on the ground. Anyway, it fell on the ground at this stage, and this was 1982 on the 11th of September. So middle of spring, really. So these fronts that come through the country at this time of the year are not unusual. Right. Let's go and see what quarantine has to offer us as we draw to a close this very beautiful morning. It's somewhat blustery. So I'm a little bit upset that I'm just watching a red-breasted swallow fly over us. I don't think Bryan will make you seasick if he tries to show it to you. They are flittering about the place. But I'm a bit upset that we haven't managed to propagate that Ancelia. I think I will have to go and do some reading on it. I do have a book about growing indigenous plants, so perhaps a bit more reading and a bit more research will result in a little more success. Very nice question from, that's an unusual bird for this area. Or is it? No, it's not. That is the red-breasted swallow. Our largest swallow species. Can you get him, Bryan?
I'm going for it.
We're going for it. There he is. Red-breasted swallow. Well done. Another one coming up behind. There's a little pair of them. Beautiful. Now, I just want to give you some sort of impression, and I don't know that I can, but I'm going to try, of the unbelievable, first of all, coordination required to fly like they do. The wind is blowing strongly. Now, a bird like that probably weighs about, say, much less than 100 grams, probably 70 grams or so very little. I mean, if you were to throw up something that weighed 100 or 70 grams, threw it into the air, it would blast off in the rain, in the wind. So they have incredible aerodynamics that allow them to fly in wind like this. I was watching some raptors flying with the wind, and I mean, they are scudding across the sky at an incredible speed. So for a little bird like that to be able to tack into the wind requires astonishing coordination. The other thing is that the G-force that a bird like that exerts on its brain is far, far greater than anything a pilot in a supersonic jet would exert on them before they pass out. So they really do have the most remarkable adaptations to go from huge speeds to flipping almost 180 degrees, and the forces that must push their brains to the side and the incredible adaptations to keep the blood in the brain and in the right places of the body are just astonishing. So I think they're amazing. And certainly the swifts and the swallows and the bee eaters and those birds that have to catch insects mid-air have the most remarkable adaptations to G-force. And then a lovely question from Sarah in Albion. Sarah, you want to know when the dung beetles are going to come out. Sarah, normally with the rains, we did have early rain, and I think there are probably a few dung beetles that are not quite ready to come out yet. Certainly the rains did immediately spark the cicadas. They came out of the ground straight away, and I was expecting there to be more dung beetles, but no dung beetles have I seen yet. I've seen a couple of similar kinds of beetles called carcass beetles. I've seen a few of them, but no dung beetles yet. So I think we'll probably have to wait another few weeks for the next proper rains, and then we'll get some dung beetles coming out. And then, interesting question from Zumi Jody. Likewise, as we move towards the summer, what kind or when will the chameleons come out? Now, the chameleons I have seen in winter and in summer, and I think the reason we don't see them a huge amount in the winter time is because we're not really out after dark. And in summer, they will tend to come out of or towards the ends of the bushes, where they're slightly easier to see in the spotlight in summertime. But Jody, I have seen a chameleon, one this season, and I'm hoping, I mean, they should be around now. It was quite a big one. So I think they will be around fairly soon. And not too long from now, we'll spot them on night drives, which will be very interesting. Right, so we're going to do a little turn through quarantine clearings, and as we're doing it, I'll just say a very fond goodbye to you all. Thank you to Bryan on camera. Thank you, Bryan. Sorry I didn't find you more entertaining things to film today. The thumb, of course, is in full magnificence at the moment. A big thank you to Brent Leo Smith, who was on the walks earlier. Hello, Brent. There he is, in the magnificent vehicle that is the Mahindra. And thank you to Louise, who's going back to Johannesburg today on directing one. The resident tones of Nikki Austin on D2. And of course Eugene, who's had nothing to do this morning, because nothing has exploded, broken, been knocked out of the sky or anything else like that. So as for the last few minutes, I'm going to send you back across to Jamie, who's had marginally more success with some wonderful elephants. And I will leave you with a beautiful sight of these kudu. But I do have to quickly, lastly say, thank you, of course, to all of you on these quiet drives for your contributions and questions, which really do make for such wonderful chats and talks. So I leave you with a sight of these beautiful kudu on this, what is turning into a fairly blustery frontal day here in the wilds of beautiful Kruger National Park. Bye-bye, and see you this afternoon.
Welcome back, and Scott and myself have safely found our way unimpeded to Arathusa Dam. So we started our show on the Gowrie Dam camera, and it seems we are going to finish our show on the Arathusa Dam camera. And I've been on the lookout for these famous fluffy chicks, but at the moment I just have the largest collection of Egyptian geese I have ever seen. I've counted 15, there might even be more. Now, a lot of them are immature goslings, so there's adult breeding pairs with their young that have survived from last year that hatched and are still hanging around a little bit. And that is fairly common to see. I just have never seen such an enormous group of them before. They are highly entertaining. There's a lot of combination of intimidation to other groups, as well as the pair bonds reinforcing that bond, a little bit of courtship happening as well. And so-called Egyptian geese, not because they necessarily come from Egypt, but because of the striking markings on their face that resembles those ancient pictures of ancient Egyptians, and the eye makeup, that very striking thick kohl eyeliner that they would wear. That's where the name Egyptian geese come from. And I know that in my dad's office in Johannesburg, one of his sort of favorite things to do is to update me year by year as to the comings and goings of the 2 geese that live outside the window in the little pond outside. These animals are very, very adaptable. They find them all the way out here as well as all the way in Johannesburg, in the middle of a city. And every year I get the pictures of these two geese, males and female, and the brood that they successfully raise from the fluffy chicks right up until they're at the gosling point that some of these geese are at now. That's always one of my favorite things to get from my dad. I've scoured the area for fluffy young looking chicks and I haven't found any, but what I think that could be is that they've been hidden away, tucked away in the nest sites around here. There could well be some hiding under the deck of the Arathusa lodge and possibly even hidden in some of the vegetation around here. They came out for a swim and then were scurried or herded back into their nests. I think that's where they're hiding, but we'll keep an eye on this area for now.
Found something there, Jamie. I don't know what it is.
Oh, hello. Sure. What was that? Bird of prey. I'm surprised the geese didn't spot it and start making a racket. It was quite a big one. Let me just grab my binoculars and see what it was. Square tail. I'm just wondering brown snake eagle maybe.
Either that or maybe a Wahlberg's.
It could be a Wahlberg's. I have seen the Wahlberg's in this area. I actually missed it just as it flew over because there was a rather ominous cracking sound from the direction of my earpiece. But it all seems to be good to go. Anyway, we are coming to the end of our sunrise safari, and it has been great to have you all on board with us as always on these live safaris. And a big thank you to Scott for all of his fantastic camera work today. It's been great having him. And thank you as always to Lou and Nikki and FC and Eugene for all of his technical genius. Anyway, we will see you this afternoon for the sunset safari. Catch you then. Have a wonderful day.